Hey guys, it's Rhea Michelle, and welcome to yet another beautiful day that God has blessed us with. I was just spending some time just talking to y'all, and it has been revealed to me that whenever we sit down and we think about some of our biggest failures, we end up getting really distraught and thinking like, man, like how am I going to come up from this? But what he really wants us to think is how our biggest failures can turn into our best testimonies and a way to overcome our fears so that we'll be able to be in a position for him to use us and work through us to get to the next level. And I feel like it's finally time for me to go ahead and tell you one of my biggest personal testimonies. So basically, whenever I was going through undergrad and college, ever since I would say 2010, I had this realization that like I wanted to be a physician. I personally wanted to be a kidney doctor or a nephrologist because my father was going through kidney failure and he just had a lot of complications from diabetes that was causing him to have health problems, and it was a very obvious decline. And it was very hard for me seeing somebody that I had always seen as this very strong figure. Like he was a state trooper, he was a very tall guy. I always saw him as this like strong guy who, would protect me through everything. And like even through his illness, I knew that he would still protect me. But it was just seeing him go from what I was used to seeing to being bedbound or wheelchair bound, and just desperately pleading for help because he was just in either a lot of pain or he was just not feeling the best. And it was really, really hard to see. And it went from him being the person who took care of me to me taking care of him. And it was just a lot during the time. And being as young as I was, and also just like, not wise and not really like in my full adulthood yet. It was just like a lot of different emotions going through my head. Like I was thinking to myself, how am I going to live my life in a different city and get through school? But then he's also really sick, and I have to keep commuting back and forth to make sure that he has everything taken care of. And, like I've gone through a lot of self condemnation, with thinking about like, oh, I was so selfish and I could have done more and I should have done more. And, like I think now as a nurse, had I known a lot of the things that I know now back then, it would have made things a lot easier and I would have been able to help make a lot of decisions. But, life has a way of working out the way it does, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because I learned a lot through that time. So I feel like that was part of my failures, and also part of overcoming some fears. Because in that time, I was fearful of him getting worse. I was fearful of not really being able to become this independent person that I wanted to become, because I was missing out on experiences by making sure that everything was okay on the home front. And I'm not saying that that was a bad thing because it ended up giving me the experiences I needed, not only to nurture as a nurse, but also to nurture as a mother. But then the other side of failure that I saw was on my journey to wanting to be a doctor. I ended up failing, like I would fail certain classes. I didn't score high on the MCAT, and actually the day that I took the MCAT is when my father had a major surgery. And by the time like I found out about it, because how things go, you go to the hospital for something and then the doctor says, okay, we're going to run some tests. And then the next day or 2 days later, they say, all right, we're going to go ahead and tell you what the results are and what your options are. So because it was a last minute notification, I couldn't cancel the MCAT. and we made a decision that I was just gonna go ahead and take it and hope for the best. If anything, like I could just always retake it, whatever. And then I went into town afterwards. But of course, that was one thing that was making me not perform at my optimum level. And I knew that it was going to affect me, but I just said, let me just get it over with and try my best anyway. And then the next step was, all right, like you could either have like a low GPA and a great personal statement and a great MCAT score. So I was thinking, well, maybe I'll try again. But the recovery period didn't go as planned. And there were some highs and lows, but eventually there was just a steady decline. So I said, okay, let me go ahead and try to apply to the master's program at the undergraduate college that I was at, so that I can, basically get some more science classes under my belt. That will boost my GPA, and then that way I can use that as something to help buffer things whenever I go to apply for med school again. So I went ahead and I did that. And I'm sorry, I said again, but I didn't apply at that time. I applied for the graduate programs. I applied to 2 graduate programs, actually. So I remember sitting in the ER, and I was with my father again for another incident. And I remember getting the email saying, congratulations, you made it into the program. And, I felt like that was another confirmation, like, okay, like here I am going along this path. This is going to be something that's going to confirm, my journey into medical school. I was elated. He was elated. It was a great moment between us, very emotional. So I get ready to go into the program, and, things have a way of just repeating itself, the patterns. So I did 2 semesters there. The first semester, I was very distracted, and they ended up putting me on academic probation because of the fact that I just couldn't balance everything. It was just too much for me to try to balance. And my mind it just wasn't there, And then for the next semester, I said, okay, like, let me see if I can do better this semester. And the thing that stuck out to me that the dean told me of the college was, all right, like, if you really want to succeed in this master's program, you're going to have to put everything on the back burner, including family. Oh, that's my baby. But that was the difficult part, because even though I said that I was going to try to do that, it wasn't something that I could do. Like deep within me, I knew that it was wrong, and it was just not the time for me to do that. So I went ahead and went through the second semester. First part of it, I was doing well, and then as his condition declined, my grades declined, and I ended up withdrawing from the program. So I basically failed out of grad school, and I failed out of that opportunity to boost my GPA so that I can apply to med school, and I ended up not applying to med school. Later on that year, my father passed away, and it was an extremely emotional time. It caused me a lot of heartbreak, but we ended up getting through it, and it allowed me to overcome certain fears that I had, one of which was the fear of him dying, and failing was definitely one. And of course that was part of the failure, part of the story. And at the time, there was just so many emotions and so many things going through my head that I just didn't know what exactly I was going to do with these next steps. So I went through a period of time where I just didn't really have like a goal in mind. I think I may have slipped into another bout of depression, but at the same time, like, it just wasn't the same as how it was. Like, I felt like I could easily get out of the way I was feeling. I just needed the time to grieve. So I feel like it was more of a grievance period. But as far as my career path, I just didn't know where to go. I was just all over the place. I knew I wanted to be in the field of healthcare, but I just didn't know exactly where. So I was trying out all the different therapies: occupational therapy, physical therapy, I even was going to go into hand therapy. I was like thinking of all the things. And then eventually I said, okay, like, let me go ahead and look into being a physician assistant or a nurse practitioner, one of those things. So I ended up doing a lot of shadowing during that time while I was also working full time and volunteering and involved in my church. And it was just a lot. And I was also trying to go through all the things that were left behind, because my father had his own home. And with that came a lot of things to sort through. And I'm very grateful for the time that he was both ill and whenever he was, had passed on, for all the help that I received and all the support and love that I received, because I definitely could not have done any of that alone, and especially not without y'all. So eventually everything was settled and gotten together, and I ended up settling on a career of being a nurse, which I absolutely love and I'm so grateful. And I finally understand why I went through everything that I went through. It was because Yah was putting me in position for where he wants me to be, not where I wanted to be, not my career trajectory or, how I wanted my life to turn out, but how he wanted it to turn out. And it definitely prepared me for a lot of things. It strengthened me. It made me into someone who is definitely more connected to him, because I fully depend on him now versus before I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and, have Yah work in my life and where I want him to work in my life, and the places that I felt like I still needed control, I just kept trying to take control. And it showed me you can't do that. So one thing that I really enjoy is this song by Eshawn Burgundy. I can't recall the name of the song, but in it he says that setback was not a death trap, it put me in position. And that's exactly what happened. So if you're somebody who's going through anything that, makes you fearful or makes you feel like a failure, just remember that Yah is probably putting you through that. You're going through the fire so that you can come out and be in the position that he wants you to be in, to either help somebody else, to glorify him, something that's for your good. And don't get discouraged. It's really easier said than done, but just continue in prayer, seek all the support you can, and know that there is an end and there's an expected end. So I hope you guys found some peace and also found some encouragement in this message, and also my baby. And you guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one.